I came to Kazakhstan first in 1960. And in 2010, my good friends and colleagues in Kazakhstan organized a mini conference to celebrate half year of my studies in Kazakhstan. I did some field work in other Central Asian countries, in Uzbekistan, in Kyrgyzstan, when I was young, in Turkmenistan also, but my heart is with your country. I can say that Kazakhstan is my country, but I certainly can say that it is one of the few countries in the world that I love very, very much. The country, its people, its environment, everything. Maybe when I was a student, I had a romantic view of the nomads. I consider them as free people, contrary to many other. I started my career as an archaeologist, and I started with the studies of ancient nomads, the Scythians, the Sarmatians, and then I turned to cultural social anthropology and began to study contemporary nomads. I first came to Kazakhstan in 1960. We were not born at that time, and I fell in love with this country, and I like it very, very much. And to this very day, I'm visiting at least once a year. Unfortunately, this virus prevented my visits the previous year, and unfortunately the next year, but in 2022, if I'm still alive, I will certainly go to North Sultan. I'm organizing a conference there devoted to the nomads, of course. And in the early 20s, I was a principal researcher of large program sponsored by my university and the USID, this organization. And we studied contemporary pastoralism in Uzbekistan, Kyrgyzstan, but especially in Kazakhstan. Some of our materials are already published, and they are kept in Kazakhstan. And I think that we have made a certain contribution to the study of contemporary pastoralists. As you know, there are no pure nomads anymore. And our point was, I think it's my point, that mobile pastoralism, if it's modernized, still remains the most economically efficient and valuable part of the economy in some parts of Kazakhstan, especially the southern Kazakhstan. Okay, what else can I tell you? That apparently that my love for nomads and pastoralists, especially Central Asian ones, will remain to the rest of my life. People, I love very much the Kazakh people. Open, friendly, extremely hospitable. This is what I like the most. But I am with a very difficult history that survived many tragedies and nevertheless managed to restore its strength, its vitality. You see, I am not idealizing Kazakhstan. It has many problems and many deficiencies, but I still think that of all Central Asian countries, Kazakhstan made the most remarkable progress. I remember Kazakhstan in the early 1990s. It was an extremely poor country with people on the brink of starvation. But nowadays, it's like heaven and earth, you see. Again, I am not idealizing any country, but the progress is remarkable. And I would say that it's not a closed country. Listen, in no other Central Asian country there is something similar to the Nazarbayev University in Nur Sultan, where all education is in English, and there are very foreign teachers there. And I met with some students there, remarkable, interesting, sophisticated. Nothing else exists in any other country. Special program. Every year, many students were sent abroad to get education in the best universities. This is a very, you see, don't underestimate this initiative. It is obvious the Kazakhstan government wants to get very educated people, you see, and doesn't spare money to this quite expensive program. Nothing similar exists in any other country. You know what? Personally, my good friend Vlad Masanov died unfortunately prematurely, published an excellent book, The Kazakh Civilization. Are you acquainted with this book? But nevertheless, personally, I prefer to avoid this theme as much as possible because it is very imprecise. What everybody means different things by the term civilization. You see, in my publications, I avoided this term, never used it. So the nomads had their own culture, adjusted to their way of life, their specific economic activities. You know, it was not autarkic way of life. The nomads always needed the products of agriculture and crafts from their sedentary neighbors. When necessary, they traded. But when they were stronger, quite naturally, they tried to conquer these territories or to demand tribute. By the way, sedentary people, whenever it was possible, did the same. So in this regard, the nomads were no different. But what is interesting, despite of their relatively backward way of life, until the 15th or even 16th century, in different regions of the Eurasian states, situation was a little different. The nomads in military regards were often much stronger than their sedentary neighbors. In sedentary societies, with very rare exceptions, military activity was specialized. Only particular people, professional soldiers, were involved in military activities. But in nomadic society, every male was an excellent warrior. I witnessed myself in contemporary Mongolia how 4 or 5 years boys dealt and ride with the horses. Fantastic. And the same happened with all nomads. Many European authors mentioned with great surprise that 5 years the boys were already mounted various. They learned how to shoot from the weapon, how did many other things. You see, so nomads, contemporary population of Mongolia, is about 2 million people. At the beginning of the 20th century, it was 1.5 million, you see. And the Sulu society 2,000 years ago had the same number of people, because you understand why, you see, Kazakhs were more numerous. Kazakhs or their predecessors, the Kipchaks, you see, their main ancestors, but hardly more than 3 million people. Maybe 4, I doubt, you see. And nevertheless, they were quite successful, you see, in military regards. This way, the nomads were able to overcome their economic deficiency, many others, because practically all males were excellent warriors, you see. This is a very interesting, peculiar situation. I don't know any other society, ancient or medieval, where the situation was similar. What I am arguing already since the collapse of the Soviet Union, before that, it was impossible. We cannot preserve the nomadism as it existed in the medieval period of time, for quite obvious reason. It needs to be modernized. But nevertheless, mobile pastoralism remains the most efficient economic activity in dry and semi-dry zones of Kazakhstan. And look at the Mongols, by the way. You see, they have the airmen, actually only one city, Ulaanbaatar, but in the rural areas, they still involved in mobile pastoralism. And some, not only scholars, but some politicians in many countries, including your own, consider pastoralism already as backward activity that should be substituted for something. I don't know for something, what kind of agriculture is possible in the desert, I don't know, you see. But I am personally acquainted with some very successful pastoralists in Kazakhstan, South Kazakhstan and Central Kazakhstan. Of course, their life is semi-sedentary, you see, but still half of a year, their stock moves from one desert pasture to another. They hired some shepherds, complaining about difficulty with hiring them. Some of them are not Kazakhs, but Kyrgyz, but it is the other side of the story. So there are already success. But some of your politicians want to turn it into sedentary, to sedentarize completely, to sedentary animal husbandry, not mobile pastoralism. I just ask 2 questions. Where can you get fodder? So it should be brought. It will be more expensive than using the natural pastures. You see, I am acquainted with one successful farmer, or maybe more than a farmer, who told me that he is not using natural pastures, that he sells fresh meat, sent planes to Saudi Arabia, etc., etc., etc. But okay, maybe he knows how to, but how many pastoralists can follow his example? This guy is well connected. I will not follow my story, but he is an exception.